On this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss game-shaped objects. We cover art versus sales, true competition, playtesting tips, and more. Let's dive into it.
Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral1.com. Hirschgleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code Crowdfunding Nerds 101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin. Let's go.
We're the Alliance.
Amazing.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined, as always, by Sean. And today, we're going to be discussing game-shaped objects. What an interesting topic. Sean, can you explain?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of our clients, and I was just relating that at Strong Tower Con, we were playing as a team. You know, the whole Crowdfunding Nerds team was playing a Root, the role-playing game. We played a role-playing game together. I was the GM, and it was a blast. We had so much fun playing. It was really great to see everyone's kind of personality shine through these characters. And then we just got talking about different role-playing games and different systems, and the kind of prevalence of Dungeons and Dragons that's kind of saturated the market. And this particular client is stating his, I suppose, discontent for Dungeons and Dragons, to put it mildly, and saying how he doesn't think it's a great game, but it sells really well. And why is that? Why? And many publishers, I think, try to make the best game they possibly can. And then he said, many publishers don't realize they're not selling games, they're selling game-shaped objects. I thought that was an interesting term that we could probably do a deep dive into it. But that's kind of how we got discussing that particular topic, the difference between creating, you could maybe say, art, something that is designed to, communicate a message or maybe inspire people, versus selling things to make money. These kind of like two different sides of the coin. And, depending on what your goal is, you might realize that selling art or selling games selling good games isn't as important as perhaps trying to sell a product that actually makes money and that sustains your business. So a lot to unpack and unravel here, but I thought it was an interesting topic that we could kind of launch from.
Yeah. So, this game-shaped object, I'd love for you to expand a little bit more on that in particular. What do you see? Like, I guess, why did he call the products game-shaped objects? What was he kind of getting at?
So I think there's this idea, and I think many publishers have the idea that I've made a game, people will buy it and play the game. Therefore, the game must be good. When I think a lot of people, they buy the game and they don't actually play the game. It sits on the shelf, or they give the game away to a friend. Like, it was funny because you're saying that he's bought like 12 copies of Codenames and just given it to random people as gifts. It was funny because I literally bought Codenames for my in-laws at Strong Tower Con to give to them. So I'd done the exact same thing. But that's an example of, buying a game that I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play Codenames. I didn't buy it for myself. I bought it for someone else. Are they going to play Codenames? Probably not. They're not gamers. It was more of like, oh, thank you for buying me this thing. This is probably going to sit on my shelf. I might play this at some stage if you come over and teach me how to play, because I'm not reading a rule book. So it's quite interesting. I think that's kind of where we're hitting at, the idea that your game is not really a game. It's a game-shaped object. It's something that has the appearance of being a game, and and I think this is the idea of like, you're only going to buy one version, like Deliverance. Someone might just buy Deliverance because they want a religious theme or Christian theme game on their shelf. They're not going to buy two Deliverances because it's part of collecting. It's like, oh, I can add this to my board game collection. It's there if I ever have a friend that comes over who goes to church or whatever, I can whip this out. So I think it's that kind of mentality where it's like people are buying. The psychology of buying, it goes outside of just I buy game to play and have fun. I think there's an element, I buy game because I like having games on my shelf. I buy games as insurance for when friends come over and I don't have a game that they might like, that I might be able to pull this out and play it with them. So I think there's a lot happening, and I think publishers need to understand that, especially marketers need to understand that your game might exist just to scratch an itch. So let's say there's a particular theme even that there's no board game for. Maybe a good example of this in recent history has been botany. Botany was like this plant-based game that there wasn't really anything that could really compete with it. There's nothing really that was just like that. So it kind of just it filled the need in the market.
Or
I
wingspan.
guarantee you, yeah, I guarantee a lot of people bought that game who probably would never play never play the game. It's because they like the theme, and the theme reminds them of something else, or the theme is what attracts them to it, and they just want it on their shelf, or maybe it's even the fantasy of, oh, one day I will play this. One day I'll have time to play this. And we kind of all live in this maybe fantasy land where we have unlimited time, unlimited resources, where we can play games all the time. And of course, I'll play every game in my collection. Well, I think what happens is that people buy games, very excited about it, sits on their shelf and the cellophane wrap, and then they just sell it on eventually. It's like, oh, I'm actually never going to get around to playing this. I don't know what I was thinking. And then they sell it. And I've done that. I've bought games and like, actually, this game is too big and my kind of stage of life, I'm not going to be able to table this very often. So I'm just going to sell it because I'm probably going to only be able to play this in about 10 years when my kids grow up. And I can actually like sit down with like a group of adults or, semi-adults and play like a complex 4-hour campaign game. But until then, it's just going to sit on my shelf. So I may as well sell it. And I've done that with some of my titles.
Yeah. It's interesting. There are a couple, I mean, a lot that you shared there that I'd love to unpack, but one of the things products must convince me that they're worth buying as a consumer. And that that is the substance of the product is not what convinces me. The form the
Mhm.
product takes is what convinces me. So
Yeah.
the way that you describe the product, the way that it looks like the box, and the way that the table presence the product has,
Hmm.
um, the is the rule book really long or really short? Does it have good reviews on BGG or whatever? All of this is kind of are these, in a way, like shortcuts that I take as a game player that will kind of help me make quick decisions before I actually experience the true substance of your game. And one thing that I try to do, and a lot of others are very similar. When you're really, really interested in something, like when you're really interested in a show, or like you just want to see like maybe a sporting event or like an esport thing, like you have a favorite team that's playing, you don't really want somebody to ruin it for you. If you're not able to watch it live, or if there's a book that comes out or whatever, do you ever find yourself in a position where you're like trying to avoid the internet altogether? Just never open Facebook because you don't want somebody to ruin the one thing you're really looking forward to experiencing on your own?
Yeah, and I think this is actually why movie trailers have changed over time.
Mhm.
Movie trailers used to be like a,
Let me
like a
spoil the
teaser.
3 funniest parts of the movie for you.
Yeah, well, it's like it used to be a teaser. It's like, oh, I really want to go see it and see what happens. Now it's like it's almost like a montage of the entire film in 3 minutes. And I think it's because they kind of realize, oh, the internet would just spoil anything anyway, so we may as well kind of give you, the story in 3 minutes. And like, actually, I like the story. I'm going to go watch the full thing. And so, if you look at modern trailers versus older trailers, there is this very much, old trailers are all about tantalizing you and saying, oh, what's the secret? You have to watch
Mhm.
the film to find out. Whilst trailers nowadays and modern ones are just like, here's every 2 seconds or every 1 second there's an edit, there's a cut. The beats are all kind of like very jarring and designed to like grab your attention, and oh, here's the entire story in 2 minutes, go watch the film if you want the full thing.
Yeah.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.
That's funny. I think that it is I feel like marketing nowadays is a little bit more on the nose. Like let me help you understand what this is in the quickest amount of time. And for myself, like, kind of going back to that, question that I asked you, there's so I love The Office. It's one of the shows that I think is just so funny, just such a genius show for its time. And kind of I don't want to say I grew up watching the show because I was like a young adult when it first came out, but I want to say like around season 3 or 4, like I caught wind of it and just thought it was so funny. And now there's a new, in essence, a spinoff of The Office called The Paper. And I know that there's like,
Well,
other.
Parks and Recreation, isn't that sort of the same vein?
Well, a little bit. You have certain shows that if you like The Office, you probably like Parks and Recreation, or for me, shows like Psych or um, gosh, I mean there are a number of good shows. Community is pretty dang
Hmm.
funny, but they're all funny in their own ways. But The Office has a particular type of humor, and Greg Daniels, the guy that kind of is the brainchild of The Office, or at least the U.S. version, created a new show called The Paper, which actually has one of the old cast from The Office in it. And it's like about a newspaper in Toledo, Ohio that used to be a big deal. And this camera crew is following these these employees from the Toledo, what is it called? The Toledo Truth Teller. And it's this dying company that is, kind of already spun into irrelevance and whatnot. And the first thing I did was I looked at IMDb, International Movie Database. It's an app that you can open up that will tell you generally it'll give you a star rating of a show, and it'll be like from 0 or from 1 to 10 stars. And the best shows get a decent ratings, typically 7 and above. If it's 6 and above, it's watchable. If it's 5 and above, it's it's
Pass.
like, well, if you like that particular genre, like you might really like it. Like for me, Clash of the Titans, the newer Clash of the Titans was really good, but it was like 5.1 on IMDb. I'm like, I think I like this because I really like that type of movie, and I was happy, and I watched it. But somebody that's not into like Greek mythology, fighting and whatever special superpowers, they would just totally be bored, you know. But certain movies that get like 8 and above transcend generations or like your particular interest, like Schindler's List or Lord of the Rings. You should watch these. Period.
Hmm.
There's something to be truly appreciated and treasured and valued, or The Matrix, or that kind of thing. And the so anyway, um, the paper. So I want to say The Office received a rating of like generally a rating in the eights, a very highly rated show, and which is super duper uncommon. I would think it's in like the top 10 or the top 20 shows of all time on IMDb. And the paper received a rating of like 7.3, which is way lower than The Office. And then I saw somebody on Facebook saying like, "Oh, the paper was just like the attempt. It's just like they attempted, but it's not as funny as The Office." And immediately, like I turned off, like I just closed the browser tab, forgot what I heard about or what I saw on IMDb. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch this for myself. Forget
Mhm.
whatever everyone else is saying. Feel like sometimes, you have those people that will tell you, oh, this movie was terrible because of whatever, or this movie was amazing because of whatever. And you actually have the exact opposite opinion of that person on every single thing. Do you have people like that? Where you're like, they're like, this movie was amazing. And you're like, dude, I know I'm going to hate it if this person thinks it was good. Or I hated this movie and you're going to love it if you know that person's opinion, they hated it. Um, so I'm
Or you
just
get
like,
friends that like overhype movies. So it's like, oh,
yeah,
it's such a funny film, and you watch it like, oh,
mhm,
wasn't that funny? Maybe it's because I know you laugh really loudly or something, and people laugh with you, or I don't know. But you
yeah,
get that way. Sometimes you get people who like overhype a film, and maybe that even impacts your perception of the film because you're going in thinking this is going to be a really funny film,
yeah,
and you go in and then your expectation isn't met because you're going in kind of expecting a certain thing, and then it doesn't really meet your expectation,
right.
and that then kind of changes your opinion of the thing overall, which is
It's like you with
I'm sure happens.
Spaceballs. Like when you have to see Spaceballs. This weekend we were telling Sean about what a funny movie Spaceballs was, and we watched like the first like 5 minutes or something of Spaceballs while at the convention together. And so now when Sean watches it, he's gonna be like, "Why are these people laughing about this? Stupid! This movie sucks." But it's because we all grew up on it, and I've seen it like 30 times, and I think that it's. I'm waiting for every single funny part. I'm like, "Oh, Mr. Radar is about to come up. They're about to get jammed." The industrial strength hair dryer and all of the things that the people who know what Spaceballs is, or Comb the Desert, things that are really, really funny. That if you haven't watched Spaceballs, you just wouldn't even be expecting. But so yeah, anyway, I think that I just decided I'm gonna experience this for myself, like going back to the paper, and I loved it. It was similar humor to The Office. It was a new cast of characters that I'm like, it's not as funny as like when I watch The Office and I watch Dwight. You know, I know he's gonna be taking something too
Bears beats
seriously.
Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, yeah, and you've got like Jim pranking Dwight and all of these things that if you know The Office, you would know that you would be in expectation of these things, and all of these characters are brand new. I don't know the personalities of the characters. I don't know yet how they weave together. And and I actually just started watching The Office with my oldest daughter. She's 13 now. And so we started watching The Office together. And she doesn't yet understand the relationships between the characters. So it took her like a couple of seasons to really, but all her friends were watching it. And so she's like, "We need to watch this, Daddy. We need to watch this because all my friends are watching it." And so she was willing to like put up with the first season and a half, but after a while, she starts just laughing when characters are, just kind of exhibit their typical character traits. She
Like
finds them
quirks.
funny now. Yeah. And so I thought, well, the same must be true of this show. So we're watching it and we're finding things to enjoy. We're seeing kind of how the characters are being knit together after only like 3 episodes. And it's something that I feel like after I watch the whole season, I'll be able to come back to the very first episode and now have a greater appreciation for why this character behaved in the way they did or whatever. Um, and so, but it's something that could be totally ruined for me if like the desire to have the experience could be ruined for me by other people telling me what to think. And I personally hate
Mm.
when other people try to tell me what to think. Just in general, I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna do it my own way."
I'm gonna think the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. It's like now I'm gonna think this even harder.
I think I like doing that as well. Whenever playing a video game, I always want to torture myself. It's like, oh, here's the kind of strategy to win. It's like, no, I'm gonna do it the obscure way.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use the weak character and beat people with the weak character and
yeah.
show them. I was like, just giving myself like a monumental task.
It's funny. So yeah, I think that when we kind of bring it back to like a game shaped object, the
Hmm.
product itself has to convince me. And oftentimes that is the form the product takes, not the substance that's within the box itself.
Hmm.
So, I heard one time I heard that, when I was making Deliverance, that if somebody plays your game a second time, it is already more popular than half the games on their shelf. Like that
Mm.
is a pretty bold statement. It feels like if you get a game, then you should play it a bunch. But
Yeah.
not at all. In fact, a lot of games on my shelf are either played once or they sit in the shrink or they got played half a time. And I'm like, I'll bring this out again. Or I played them, a half dozen times and I haven't opened them up in like 2 years. Um, and the games that I play a lot. Like the ones my favorites,
Yeah.
I play a lot, but I have 200 games on my shelf, and if I'm playing my favorite every chance I get, how often do you think the other 199 games get played? It's just not, they not as often. It
Your
doesn't
kids
mean
could
that I
open
don't
a
try.
board game cafe,
Seriously, they could.
like lemonade stand,
Yeah,
and you can rent a board game, drink some lemonade.
yeah. So, but anyway, I think that the I feel like another subject you brought up, creating art versus creating a product that sells,
Mm.
the artist, rather the one who is creating a product that they intend to crowdfund, you need to to get a lot of people to buy it. I see so many people that are true artists that are creating a product that they want to see enter the world, that falls on like just deaf ears because it did not take a form that people could absorb, could understand, or it was something too niche or too obscure that people couldn't relate to it, or
Mhm.
maybe they just felt like it was like it needed to have a particular thing in it that detracts from the gameplay and therefore causes the rating to be low, or and people who are unbiased are just going to tell you what they think, like this mechanic is the worst and I wish they would remove it, or whatever, or this is clunky, um or the game is fiddly. They might not even call out the particular mechanic, but they just
Mhm.
they feel like it's, or the rule book is not very good, or whatever. It comes out in lots of different ways.
What do you find more helpful, if people are super critical or if they just kind of patronizingly nice? What would you actually prefer?
Oh, I want people, so when you're talking about when we play test,
Getting feedback, yeah.
so yeah, I need people to be brutal. Like not just brutally honest, but like tell me what you think in the most painful way so that it hurts,
Hurt my feelings. You
so
have
that I
permission to hurt
remember
my
it.
feelings. I think
Yeah.
that's probably a good thing to say to like playtesters. You have permission to hurt my feelings, and
Well, people
it's
are
just
too nice, they don't want to do that. So asking, I feel like it's iRobot. Um where every single person is like that hologram projection of the doctor, if you've seen the movie, there's this doctor, this robot doctor that um allegedly commits suicide in the very beginning of the movie, and there's this detective who was played by Will Smith that was helped by this doctor, and the doctor delivers a message to like a device that is like in essence a fancy phone, or like a recording device. And he and Will Smith is able to talk to it, ask it questions and whatnot. And the device, when he asks a question that the device isn't programmed to answer, it says, "I'm sorry, my responses are limited. You must ask the right questions." And I look at every single playtester as a device like that, in a really funny way, where their responses are limited. You must ask the right questions. And so it's all about the right questions. And so, people are generally, especially when they're in person, they're kind. They want to be nice to you. They think about you, like your feelings, they matter. And they certainly don't want to, just off the cuff say something offensive to you, especially criticize your art. Like a lot of people recognize this is an art piece and you are the artist. And so I'm not going to say, I think your art piece is stupid. You used way too much green. You should have painted with black. And I'm going to say, wow, what an interesting art piece. And then, your job is to ask me the right questions. And so what I always do is I start in the same way. I start, first of all, I ask, what is the thing that you loved most about the experience that you just had? And like the one thing that you loved most, and that helps me understand where where to put the most focus, like where am I, the places that I place the greatest amount of focus, am I um am I kind of highlighting and featuring the right things? And so somebody will say, oh, and sometimes the answers will surprise me. So like this Angelcraft game that we are working on, codename Angelcraft, people will say, "Oh, I really like the class system, and I really like how my units work together, and give bonuses and stuff." Um, and it's like, okay, great. Like, how can I use the other mechanics in the game to emphasize that thing that the players highlighted that they really like interacting with? Eventually, that type of thing is going to become the hook that should draw people in. Um, and so that's, I think that question's really important for me. And then the next question that I always ask is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate this game? People will oftentimes they'll say like a rating between 7, 8, or 9. Um,
Yeah,
Rarely
actually,
will I.
could I stop you there? Because
Yeah.
this is something that Chaz, we had a conversation
Mhm.
over dinner with one of your game designers, Chaz, who works on the Deliverance side of things for lowering games. And he has a very good question he asked playtesters. He says he got this from sales when he worked in sales. And it's something to the effect of, give us a rating between 1 and 10, but you can't use the number 7. And the reason he says that, because most people will say 7 because it's like, oh, it's not great, but it's also not mediocre. And they
It's
kind of put it at
good.
7. So it's like, he says, you can't use the number 7 and you got to tell me why. And I think that's a really good question, really good way to phrase your question and get some feedback and kind of force people to say, well, it was mediocre, or actually I enjoyed this. And like, so
Mhm.
you kind of, that scale, you're kind of putting more into a binary of, yes, I liked it. Yes, yes, no, I didn't like it. Yes, I did like it. And I think that that's a very, important question to ask folks.
Yeah, and so the reason that I ask the question in the way that I do is because so like you rate it whatever a 9, you loved it, um, and of course you would say that you're my mom or you're my friend or whatever, right? Or you want to be nice to me, you rate it like let's just say 7.5 or 8.5. It was pretty good, which gives you
It's
no
like
information at all.
it's like Aragorn drinking that soup from.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah,
good.
it's good, and spit the eyeball back in or whatever. But, yeah, so then my follow-up to that, it's really a tee up to a follow-up question, which is, what adjustment could I make that would increase it by, like, a half a point for you? Or, like, 1 point, depending on
Make it
if the
free to
game is.
play.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that I have received some of the best feedback that is active after a session is over by asking that combination of questions right there. What you love most, what's your rating, and what could I do to improve it by 1 point? That so that what you love most is like what highlights why would you back this game on Kickstarter is in essence what I'm asking. Um, but I get the answer to why they might back the game on Kickstarter. The next question is, what is the biggest foil to your enjoyment of the game? Like your enjoyment of the experience that you just had, what is the biggest foil to your enjoyment that you just ran
The
into?
biggest barrier.
Yeah. And sometimes people are like, oh, I just felt really limited on resources. I felt like my character wasn't very powerful compared to other characters, um, and that kind of thing. So those are the things that I need to change before the next playtest. I have to fix it.
Yeah.
So I one thing I hate more than anything is, like the prototype that I made of Angelcraft. Um, if I just brought out the same prototype to the next convention, I would probably get the same feedback.
Yeah.
And I do not want to get the same negative feedback. If I can shore up the negative pieces of the game that they didn't enjoy very much, like my character didn't feel very strong, well, maybe I bump that character's attack by 1 and it feels very strong. Well, maybe the next feedback that I get is, when someone plays that character is my character felt like I couldn't move very far. And like everyone else got into battle really quickly, but my character felt like it was always lagging behind. It's like, so it wasn't that my character felt weak. It was the character can't engage in battle like they want to. And maybe I need to bump their movement by 1 and I can nerf the attack by 1 and the problem is solved or whatever. Just as like a
Mhm.
super duper simple example. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of my, methodology for testing. But then,
So
every single oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
one thing I'd also add is I think it's very important that when you're giving feedback, because I think as a game designer, you're going to be playtesting and you have people playtesting your stuff, that whenever you're giving feedback, always start with the positive and then lead to the negative. And you, you actually see this in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible. Jesus is critiquing 7 different churches, and he always starts with what is positive. It's like, this is what I like about you. You do this okay. And then it's like the critique comes. And I think there's one church, there is nothing positive, it's just the critique.
Oh man.
So I think there's kind of like a model there, and I think there's like a principle that can be applied here that whenever giving, like whenever you're reviewing something, leading with what is positive, I think is a great way to start, and then bringing in the critique.
Mhm.
So I really liked this about your game. I think it does this really well. However, I would like to see this change, and it kind of softens the blow, maybe the emotional blow of the criticism, just a little bit.
I think that, I've seen, there are many games I've tested for other people and they've asked for feedback and whatnot. And I'll tell you the big mistake that I see when people make this mistake, it's just larger than every single other mistake you could possibly make. Defending your design. defending your decision.
Mm.
Don't defend your decision to me. I told you my feedback, why I think this game sucks, and you're telling me that there's a reason it sucks. And it's like, okay, well, fine. I just the sometimes when people defend, and I'm obviously exaggerating my feelings, the intensity of my feelings for a hyperbole for a point. Exaggeration for effect, I guess, is the definition of hyperbole. But when somebody tells me why something is the way it is, what they're explaining to me is why they're not going to change the game. And um, I kind of am immediately in a position of, okay, well, so I'm not going to like this. Um, so you're going to make sure,
Or you
yeah,
don't care about my feedback. I think that might be the other thing you could be communicating.
it's not, yes, that's true. I do think it's very important because when people give you feedback, they are just, they're kind of putting themselves out there for your benefit. Like, I want
Mm.
your product to be as successful as it can possibly be. So that's why I'm willing to give you feedback. And so when people um, don't receive feedback with grace, they're they're discouraging me from giving my true feedback.
Mm.
So when somebody is like constantly defends their decisions or their design choices, oh, this is like this because of XYZ. It's not my job to actually fix the game as a playtester. It's my job to point out that there's a problem. I might try to define why I think the problem is the way it is, but
Mhm.
it's your job as the designer to know
Find a
that there's a
solution.
problem. And yeah, exactly. Your job is to fix it, to find the root cause and fix it. So you might get several different types of feedback and eventually decide, the movement of my game is kind of the core reason that this guy feels weak and that this guy feels too strong and that this guy or whatever and that the game ended later than it should have or whatever. Like maybe I need to double the movement of all my characters. I don't know. So those types of those bits of feedback are there for you to kind of process. And the number one thing I think you need to say is thank you for your feedback. And you don't have I mean, I've had crazy ideas, like people that are so passionate about the dumbest things. They're like one time I had
You talking about me?
no, actually there's one I always think about where one time I was playtesting Deliverance back in the early days and we had status effects in the game. One was called blind.
Mhm.
And this guy thought the idea of an angel being blind was so ridiculous that he walked around the game store that we were in like Frankenstein. I'm blind, like walking around like with his hands out and everything, and eyes closed. Like I'm an angel and I'm blind, and he was almost like hitting the shelves, and like it was really embarrassing. And he was so passionate about blind being the wrong name or the wrong effect. Like you should never be blind as an angel, and because you have a chance to miss, which is stupid, and angels shouldn't miss, and whatever. And it was just his thought, and there was a problem there. But the what he was saying was like just remove this for the angels and make sure only the demons can be blind, and it was the wrong solution. But he was identifying a problem that went deeper than just simply the status effect. It was actually
Mhm.
what it boiled down to was the name of the effect itself. So we changed the blind to cursed, and it's like it just changed everything. Nobody ever had a problem with it again. But we had lots of problems with blind where people were missing when they would attack, and it felt like very
Was a bit
anticlimactic.
deflating.
Yeah, because you use one of your two limited actions is the decision space, and you do the best you can, calculate the best you can, and you just miss because of bad dice roll, and you feel like you gained nothing and made no progress, and that
Mhm.
was the actual problem. So we made sure that wherever it mattered, you got to have like a deterministic decision, or whatever
Mm.
was going on. It didn't need um, a dice roll to see if you actually succeed on something like that. So, but yeah, so
Yeah.
the oh, go ahead. You had a thought.
Oh, yeah, I was just about to say it requires a bit of self-sacrifice, but, why are you making your game? Are you just making it for yourself? Because then you probably can make a game that you love and that only you will love, right?
Yeah.
And like no one else is going to buy. And go do that if you want to. Go, go spend a game and make a game that only you will play and only you will love. But if your goal is to serve others, it requires a bit of self-sacrifice, and you will have to make compromises to your maybe original vision. And because what's the purpose here? Are you just trying to please yourself, or are you trying to please your customers or future customer? So I think there's an element where you have to say, actually, my original vision was like this, but I need to modify it in accordance with this overwhelming feedback I'm getting from all these other people that,
Yeah.
I might not like it. I might prefer it to be like this or like that, but other people really value it like this.
Yep.
And if my goal is to ultimately serve them and meet their needs and meet their desires and engaging them with this game and product, then I need to act accordingly and not just think about my own wants and desires when creating this. Because I think a lot of maybe even first time developers, they do exactly that. They just make the game that they want. And then they wonder, like, why does no one like my game? Well, because you made it for yourself, no one
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. This I guess it's back to like creating art versus creating a product that sells. And I think that the artist needs to start with a vision. And for me, it's always kind of boils down to the experience I want my players to have. So I want my players to feel like, in Deliverance, epically powerful angels that are just about to die and, just on the verge of defeat. So, that was always the central goal. But there were certain things that got in the way of that. And it was a little while before I could kind of boil that down to such a simple, straightforward, thought. Early on, I'm like, I'm making this game that's like a dungeon crawler. I'll call it a dungeon crawler, and you'd have map boards or map tiles that had stairs like Diablo that you could go to like level 2 and you would flip that tile over after you got to the stairs. And if you wanted to go downstairs, you could do that and you flip the tile over and you would experience other things and treasure and whatnot. Well, the game, players were finding that to be distracting from like what they wanted to do. They just wanted to punch stuff and, gain experience and level up and experience this cool system that didn't need like dungeon crawling in it. And I was like defending my idea, trying to keep the dungeon crawling, but I realized it's getting in the way of what the players want to do. So
Mm,
I need to either change it so that it supports what the players want to do or eliminate it. And I think everybody kind of looks at themselves in early on at least as though they are kind of like the Steve Jobs mentality or the Henry Ford mentality, where it's like you can have whatever color car you want so long as it's black.
mm.
Or Steve Jobs is like, I'm going to tell people what they want. And, that was his mentality. And, there are people in this world that have ideas that are so great that they can behave that way. However, I would say in the vast majority of cases, that's that's not how you should behave. You need to listen to your consumer feedback. And I would say there's probably nobody that did a better job listening to consumer feedback than Steve Jobs or Henry Ford. They just had this idea for how to do things in a better way, and um Apple is like intent on listening to their customers about what do they like about the product, how do they use the product, what do they want more. That's why the iPad came into existence. It was like a gigantic screen. And, I remember like watching Zoolander, and Mugatu, the bad guy played by Will Ferrell, had this tiny little cell phone. He opened this baby little cell phone and he was talking on it because that's what they thought it'd be like in the future. But we have these actually giant honking devices that have a fairly large screen that I
Yeah,
can
some of these
barely swipe
phones
my
could
thumb
really put
across.
yeah,
I
put in
don't
your
have small
pocket.
hands. Yeah. So yeah, I think that you definitely need to compromise your what you have in order to achieve your vision as an artist that's making a product. Um, you can have something that you want, but in the end, if you find, like you start out with this idea of like, who is my target market? It's people that are like me that want to play a game like this. And I think that's an acceptable starting place. But when you go from people like, define, so you find some people like you, then figure out what it is that they like about your product, it is no longer just people like you, because there are certain traits that you all share together, but there are other reasons that they would buy this, that they would spend money on this, that you didn't think about. And I learned early on for some of my earlier developments that the reason that people will buy this is not actually why I would buy this. And so, I need to kind of lean into those things, and kind of going back to the form versus the substance. The way that I would describe what deliverance was would oftentimes turn somebody off or get somebody really excited about the game. And
Mm.
I learned that it was quite frustrating. You can't say, sometimes I would just say the wrong thing, and people would be, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm out of here." It's like, so it's not interesting, and you're out of here. And so I would try to just let the game speak for itself. I learned, let the game speak for itself, let the product speak for itself. And so the product's form was something that took shape over time, and it became something that was attractive. So whatever I said about it was secondary to the actual product's form. It kind of teases the substance. So the box cover for a board game teases what type of experience you're going to have when you open the box and play it. And so I think that, this, going back to what the client was talking about, these game shaped objects, I almost feel like it's a false pretense or presumption, maybe like an assumption that you would make your axiom, the thing that you define truth by in this industry. You have um, certain facts that you base every like your growth upon, and one of them in this industry that I think may be a false um axiom is that the game must be good. A false assumption.
Mm.
um People buy all sorts of garbage that is not good. That's my evidence. People buy all sorts
Yes.
of total garbage that's not very good.
Mhm.
But it looks good. It looks interesting. It looks amazing. It looks like
Or
I'm
it
gonna
makes them
have fun.
feel a certain way.
Right. So there are some games that I have purchased that sit on my shelf because it looked really good, but I'm not actually opening it. It's like, why am I not opening this? Or, I get it, I open it, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a 75-page rule book. Um, I just
Yeah.
haven't become brave enough to jump in. So, but shoot, I paid $100 for this. And that's kind of and I think that the crossroads of form versus substance, or creating art versus creating a product that sells, there is a crossroads there where you can create something that is your artistic vision that takes a form that sells too.
Yeah.
And I think that the most successful products are games that look really good and play really good. Um, so, kind of going back to this Wingspan, or, I don't know what else we were talking about, but it's been so long. Um, I think that there are very there's a lot of room for crossing those two lines in a positive way. You can have a very artistic game. There are abstract tile laying games that I can't even explain what Azul is. Just like lay tiles in rows and columns, and um I don't know why you would play this, but it's fun, and I can't really explain why. Um it just works.
Well, even
And
Catan, the sales of Catan is kind of abstract. It's like you're settling Catan, but there's no kind of lore or background to what that is, or you kind of just fill in the blanks yourself.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of games that do that. Maybe it's something to keep in mind as well. I think a lot of people might think of their lore and their story and think that I can answer all these questions about it. But some people they might just construct. As long as you give them a framework, they might construct their own
Mhm.
understanding of that world and kind of shape it themselves, and you're kind of pointing them in the right direction. I think a lot of novels do this because you're limited by words, so that it requires your imagination to kind of fill in the blanks of what the world looks like, and that's why when you get a novel that then becomes a film, so many people are disappointed with it because it doesn't meet their expectation of their own imagination that they filled in the blanks. Actually, no, I didn't envision it like that. I envisioned it like this. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, and there's this question that's kind of been on my mind while we've been discussing these things about game-shaped objects and the selling of game-shaped objects. What is your true competition? Is the last area I'd really like to cover, which is your true competition. Like instead of playing this, you're I think a lot of people think that their competition would be games in a similar theme with a similar playtime that target a similar player count with, whatever. But in actuality, the true competition, I might want to take a nap instead of playing
mhm.
this. So why should I play this over do whatever other activity that could take up 1 hour of my time? If your game takes 1 hour, I could do anything else that takes 1 hour. It's not just games. In fact, Christian board gamers that are designing games, they oftentimes think, oh, well, I'm going to make a game like Pandemic, but Christian, or Catan, but Christian. It's like, well, you're you're not differentiating yourself by making it Christian. You're just making like a slightly worse version of Catan. Like, I would rather play Catan. There's nothing like satanic about Catan, unless you're talking about like trading two sheep for one wheat and, to the leader.
I mean, the
Um,
thief is pretty satanic.
yeah, it's messed up. We play with Robin Hood rules where the thief only attacks the person in the lead,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and gives to the poor versus the person in last place. So
That's a good rule.
yeah, it's actually really really
It
fun.
just makes the game super long, then I say.
It does, yeah, sometimes, but more enjoyable. And so anyway, but yeah, so your competition, you're not eliminating competition by changing the theme of your product. You're you're just it's just not something that in a lot of ways it doesn't eliminate competition. If I am looking to have a grand experience of some kind, I think the only thing that changes your competition is the type of experience that you're aiming to give your players. So I think Twilight Imperium, I use it as an example all the time, where it's like Catan in space with like extra rules. It takes a lot more to finish a game of Twilight Imperium, but the experience that you're looking to deliver is this epic, grand experience, like a grand opera game versus Catan, which is like you can finish it in 1 hour if you all know what you're doing, no problem. Um, and so they're aiming to deliver different experiences. So your true competition would be other things I can occupy my time with. So whatever your product is, the form has to show me that it's worth a try, and the substance of the actual product will show me that it's worth a replay. Is that a good line to wrap on?
I think
You have
so.
any final
Yeah.
thoughts?
No, I agree. I think we've covered a lot in this episode.
All right, Robot Richard, send us out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy.